Well, as you guys can see, it didn't take Mother Nature very long to go ahead and give us a taste of winter. We're going to keep going on this project. This is my 1974 Wheel Horse D180. If you watched the last video, that V-twin we took out of that Cub Cadet is going to go in this. So I need to get this thing in the shop. So I'm hoping I can hit it with some ether and the jump pack, get it limping enough that I can get it in the garage. If not, we'll have to try to drag it in, and just not fun to do. But let's go ahead and see what we can do. I honestly can't remember the last time I had this thing running. I know it's got a plethora of issues, mostly with the carburetor. The engine is wore out, and I'm pretty sure we're fighting an issue with a no charge. And the other thing I discovered the last time I tried to start it, the choke cable is no longer hooked up, so the choke kind of does what it wants. We got fuel or a filter. Come on. Come on. You guys see my struggle. Well, guys, I think all I'm gonna do is continue to burn this starter up, so I guess we're gonna do plan B and drag this thing in. Baby. Ah, good enough. Well, enough time has passed that this thing has managed to completely thaw out, so I'd say we're safe to go ahead and start working on it. But for those who missed the last video, let me just kind of bring you up to speed on what we're going to be doing here. So as mentioned, this is my 1974-ish Wheel Horse D160. Now this would have came factory with a Kohler K482 post-cylinder twin. I guess they were good engines, but you got to figure this thing's 50 years old at this point. I can't find parts for it. I'm having a lot of trouble, as you guys saw, trying to get it running. So I've been wanting to do an engine repower on it. Now, as some of you may know, and what most of you are going to see in this video, the way these tractors are set up, they actually run a PTO shaft or a drive shaft off the flywheel of the engine. So that kind of limits my engine options. I needed something that has the ability to run a PTO or a drive shaft on the flywheel. They usually take special kind of thrust bearings. So you can't just throw a shaft drive on a flywheel on any engine and hope it's going to last. So in the last video, you guys saw me get that old Cub Cadet 1440 up and running, and it actually had this engine in it. This is a notorious Vanguard series of V-twin engines. This particular one here is a 14 horsepower, and if you watched it, you saw this thing runs great. So, long story short, old crappy engine out, the new hotness in, tractor back to work. Let's get into it. I think to help with my ability to film and show you guys what's going on, and just to get the clearance needed to get that engine out, I am going to go ahead and pull this hood and grill assembly, and that should give us all the room we need. Oh, come on. Stuck on the mufflers. Ooh. There goes my headlight. Ah, there we go. Whew, okay. Yeah, I think taking the hood off was the right call, because now we get nice access to our engine mounting bolts. So it'd be a matter of just going through, disconnecting what little wiring we do have, throttle cable, choke cable, and we should be ready. All right, lower it down. Lower it down.
What?
Keep going. That's good. That's good. All right, let me do it. Why don't you step back so this thing don't fall on you. It's got to be every bit of 100 pounds.
It's 1,000 pounds.
We're going to set it right here for now. And there we go. Got a nice clean slate to put our new engine. You guys can see here, this is the wheel horse coupler that comes off the hydraulic pump. The splines actually look pretty good on that. I was worried about that. But anyway, they bolt this rubber isolator in line, I'm guessing, to take up some of the vibration, obviously, of the engine. So we'll have to figure out the mounting adapter to make this thing work on that flywheel, and we also need to work on some engine risers, because I'm sure that that Briggs is not the same height as that old Kohler. So now, guys, like I mentioned, the two biggest hurdles you're going to run into on a repower project is typically going to be the engine mounting, figuring out what custom base you need, and the drive coupler adapter. On side shaft engines that are belt drive, it's usually a little bit easier to figure out. You just got to get a different size pulley, etc. But on these shaft drive engines, it's a little bit more difficult than that. As you guys saw, this is the coupler off the D series. This side here slides onto the hydraulic pump, and it has got this rubber dampener / adapter in line that went to the flywheel on that Kohler. However, this Vanguard has actually got a deeper recessed flywheel than that Kohler, and this coupler will not work in this setup. Now, I'm sure I could probably get a hold of a fab shop, get some measurements, have them make me something to make that work. But luckily for me, I have got friends in high places that know how to solve problems like this. What you guys are looking at here is a custom machined adapter made in-house by our friends at Small Engine Warehouse. Not only is this going to allow us to bolt this adapter to this engine, it's also going to give us the spacing we need to get this engine set back far enough that we don't have any interference fits. So huge shout out to Small Engine Warehouse for hooking me up with this. If any of you guys are thinking about doing a repower project on your garden tractor, be sure to check them out. Not only do they sell parts and pieces like this, they also sell complete conversion kits, engines, all kinds of stuff, you name it. I'll put the link for them in the description, and you guys go check them out. Now, as far as the next problem, it's a little bit easier to figure out, but takes a little bit more work, if that makes any sense. As mentioned, this Kohler engine is a totally different design engine than that Vanguard. But the main thing you need to focus on when you're figuring out your mounting is the height of your crankshaft. And it's even more so important on these shaft drive engines because there's no give in this. The only play we have in this drive system is that rubber dampener I showed you. So when we go to mount this Vanguard, we need to make sure that it is as centered and straight on this spline drive as possible. Otherwise, we're going to have worn out components, and these splines and the bearings in this will not be long for the world. Easiest way to figure that out, get you a quick measurement, see what your height difference is from your engine mounting face to the center, and then we'll do the same on the engine, figure out the difference. That'll tell us how much of a spacer we need. So we are looking at 7.5 inches. So over here in the Vanguard, it looks like we have got a center measurement at 4 1/4, guys. I think that's going to be dead center on this, 5 1/4. So 7.5 minus 5 1/4, we need a 2 1/4 inch spacer to get this thing in the same place as the Kohler. Now there's a million different ways that you can go about making a spacer. You could do something like this, get some round rod, cut it to pieces. These are actually the spacers that came off the Cub Cadet. You can also take some flat washers, stack them up. I've done that several times before. It works fine. It just doesn't look very professional. But since I knew we had 2 1/4 inches to make up, I knew I wanted to do something a little bit different. So let me show you how I'm going to do it. What we've got here is some 2-inch square tubing. This is 3/16 wall. And I picked this up from my local welding shop. He cut me 2 pieces, 12 inches long each. Out the door, this was 15 bucks. To me, that's a small price to pay to not have to rig something up or do something sketchy. So if you guys are going to do this, I highly recommend that you check into your local fab shops and support your local businesses, you know. And before you guys go yelling at me, yes, I know this is 2-inch square tubing. This means it's 2 inches outside to outside. So how am I going to make up that 1/4 inch? Well, it wouldn't be a dragging up video if I didn't do something kind of jank. So here's my plan. I know I've got a good solid 2 inches here. To make up that 1/4 inch, I'm going to use some flat washers. The reason being, I can fine tune this a 1/16 at a time. If 2 1/4 inches is too much, I can take a washer out. If it's not enough, I can stack 3 up. It's all about tuning the engine height and trying to get it perfect. But using this 2-inch square tubing is going to take out a lot of the guesswork. But let me show you where it's going to get complicated. But right here at the tip of my finger, you guys can see the remnants of the factory bolt holes. So even with the engine slid all the way forward, the bolt holes on our new engine will not line up with the factory ones. You kind of see it better on this side. So not only is this new engine, the footprint smaller front to back, it's also narrower. I'm going to bolt our spacer to the factory mounting holes. That way I don't have to drill new holes in this frame. And then I will install new bolts from our engine to our spacer. I've just got a couple 3/8 bolts sticking in these holes here. We'll see if my measuring was right. Oh yeah. Perfect fit. Well, as you can see, well, maybe it's kind of dark in there. I do have the coupler slid onto the hydraulic pump. I've got our spacers bolted down tight, and I've got the engine mocked up and where I think it's going to live at. And if you guys look, I've got my washers in there. I've got 4 of them stacked up right now. That seems to be the money spot. We'll have to see. If it looks like it's out of kilter a little bit, we can add one or take one out. So now I'm ready to go ahead and get our engine mounting holes marked and our spacers. We'll get those drilled out. You know, I always try to show you guys new and exciting tools that I come across, or tools that companies send me to try out. And I've got one I want to show you guys today. What you guys are looking at here is Gulu's F3 electric air duster. I'm sure some of you guys have seen this thing on the TikTok or in various places. Well, it just so happens Gulu's a friend of the channel. They've sent me a couple different battery jump packs and cordless tire pumps to try out for you guys. And they also are making one of these air dusters. I've only used this thing a few times, but I am really impressed with how much air this little thing actually moves. I mean, look at that. This thing is neat. I can blow my workbench off with this thing. Hell, I could even throw this in the truck with me and blow my floor mats out with it, blow the dash off. Very slick little tool. If you guys are in the market for a F3 cordless air duster, I recommend you check out Gulu's. And like always, the link for this stuff will be in the description. All right, let's go and get the engine put back on. Well, you guys ain't gonna believe it, but I managed to drill those holes in the right spot. So I have got all of our bolts in. I'm not gonna be able to weld studs like I wanted to because I cannot get the bolts into this square tube because they're too big. Little trick I'm sure you guys have seen trying to get somewhere blind. Get you a little piece of painter's tape on your wrench to hold your nut in place for you when you slide it in. Usually works pretty good. Just like that. I just got to do that 3 more times and our engine will be completely mounted. Guys, I have got the engine fully mounted down and it is looking great and right at home on this D-Series. Now I know I could take the time to pull this thing back apart, paint up them engine spacers, but You know, if I do that, it's just gonna look funky with bright red parts on this faded red tractor. So I'm just gonna leave them in raw steel. They're naturally gonna rust over time and kind of match the rest of the tractor. And who knows, if I ever decide to restore this thing, I can paint it then. But that being said, we're ready to move on to the next thing, or the next things, I should say. We need to go ahead and do all the other stuff. We gotta figure out the wiring, we gotta figure out the fuel system, battery cable, and after doing some rooting around in here, it appears that most of the factory wiring is still intact on this tractor, for the most part. It's all there, but it's already been bypassed and chopped up and clipped on and stuff like that. So I think for my sanity, I'm going to rip out that entire harness, whatever's left, and we're gonna wire up a new harness for that key switch. We've got wire nuts, splices. The safety switches, the few safety switches this thing had are already bypassed. I'm assuming this is probably a pressure switch. Whenever you engage the clutch, there's wires running underneath for a seat switch. It's already been cut out. So yeah, I'm not gonna shed a tear over this one. Hopefully you guys don't either. So I'm just going to get to chopping here. The only wire I need to really try to save is the one going to our starter solenoid, because I'd like to not have to mess with the terminals on it. Okay, I think I got it all. All right, I'm gonna try to do my best to explain what I'm doing here, and hopefully you guys can kind of understand where I'm going with this, because I suck at explaining wiring. So this tractor's got a 5-pin key switch on it, about the easiest one there is to wire up. You can get on Google and find a diagram pretty quick, but I'll just walk you through what we're gonna have to worry about. This bottom pin here is the start terminal. This is what is gonna go to our solenoid, that one wire I saved. So we know what that one's gonna do. This one here is the battery. We're going to run a wire direct from this to the positive post on the battery. That is going to supply power to the key switch. This one here on the bottom left, this is the kill wire essentially. This is what takes the signal from the ignition coil and puts it to ground when you shut the key switch off. This top right here is for the regulator or the charging coil. We're going to run a wire from that to this terminal here. And what this is going to do when you turn the key to on, it's going to connect battery positive to that pole. It kind of does two things. It's going to charge the battery through the key switch, and for example, like on this engine here, it's a little bit newer. Typically the regulator has to see voltage before it will start working. Top left pole is your accessory lug. This is if you wanted to power something, a relay, your headlights. That's how it was from the factory. I don't feel comfortable running the load of the headlights through this key switch, so we are not going to do anything with this one. I'm glad I stocked up on these recently, because I'm going to be using a lot of them today. You definitely want to use insulated connectors when you're doing this. Otherwise, these terminals can accidentally short out on each other. Got all of our new wires hooked up on here. I'm going to go ahead and put our key switch back in, and yeah, then we start wiring it up. Now I'm pretty sure this red wire coming out of the side of the engine is our ignition coil kill wire. So this is what I'm going to go ahead and hook up to that spot on the key switch. I know for a fact this red wire here is our output from our voltage regulator, obviously, because that's what it is. So I'm going to go ahead and put quick connects on these as well. That way if I need to pull this engine back off, I don't have to cut anything again. We are at the point where I'm ready to go ahead and test this wiring and make sure I did everything right, and hopefully we don't see a smoke show. But in order to do that, we need to put a battery in. But before we can do that, we got to do some modifying here to this factory battery cable. Now, as you can see, this top post here, the battery that was in this wheel horse takes the like automotive style clamp. I am not going to be reusing this same type of battery. It was the same issue I ran in with on the Cub Cadet. These are like 3 times the money, and it's just not necessary. So I'm going to be using a good old U1 battery, which means that we are going to have to convert that battery cable over to the, the eyelet connector. And longtime viewers of the channel will know that I haven't had a proper battery cable crimper this entire time. Well, I finally splurged and bought myself one, so we're going to try this thing out. This kit on Amazon, I'll put it in the description. I don't remember what it cost, but it came with battery cable cutters, the crimper, Came with all these different eyelets to use and some heat shrink. So we're going to test this thing out and see how good it is. Battery cable cutter seemed to work. Pretty good, actually. Now, once you figure out what size terminal you're going to use, you come up here to this quick change head, and you actually just spin these things around to the size you need. Pretty slick. Oh, yeah, not too bad. I mean, it's definitely on there. It ain't the prettiest, but I think that was me. I think that was user error. I might have had the wrong size die. But anyway, you guys get the gist of it. Definitely going to be a nice upgrade for the garage here. Well, I'd say the worst thing y'all are going to see me do in this episode is use this really small wire as a ground. Yeah, I know. Okay, guys, we're ready to check and see if my wiring's good. I do have a spark plug tester in line here to make sure that I don't have that ground circuit messed up. Got the good old Cub Cadet key. Seems fitting. Let's go ahead and hit the key here and see what happens. Oh, yeah. Man, that's awesome. I don't know if you guys saw it, but we did have spark, so that's good too. So I know I didn't mess that wiring up. So yeah, we're getting closer. Let's keep chipping along here. Quick update for you guys. I did go ahead and get a few things done. Choke cable was no big deal at all. It looped out over here. Just had to change the end on it. The only thing is it's backwards from factory. So when it says choke on, it's actually choke off. No big deal. Honestly, the work it would take to switch that geometry around really isn't worth it to me, so I'm going to live with that. Fuel line routing. Again, I am not crazy, or am I proud of this. I don't really necessarily like having my fuel line run directly underneath some wires, but it is what it is for now. The fuel system on this is on the opposite side of the engine, unlike that Kohler. That's why we've got a crossover. But we're just trying to get this thing going for now, so we can adjust that later. However, the big issue I've got now, and I've got to figure out how I want to go about fixing this issue. That Kohler from the factory used this metal rod, this metal linkage rod here for the throttle. This hooked into the throttle lever here. This end clicked on the carburetor, and it worked fine. However, this Vanguard, like 95% of all other engines today, requires a cable. It goes through this cable stay here, hooks on this. That's what turns your throttle. So I've got to figure out how to adapt that old style throttle lever to the new style setup. I've got an idea in mind. So I got to wait for some parts to come in, and then we'll start chipping away on that, and then hopefully we'll be able to hear this thing run. It is the next day, and I've had some time to think on our issues here, and I've decided I'm going to change some stuff up. I ran to the local Napa store, and they actually had a throttle cable in stock that I believe I can make work. So we'll get to that in a minute. I'll show you guys what we're going to do. I also picked up some new fuel line. We can redo this abomination of a fuel hose we got looped through there running right next to the battery. I don't know. I might try to run it in front of the battery, tidy it up a little bit. I don't know. We'll see. The other thing we need to take care of is this battery cable. This is our battery feed to our starter solenoid. And if you guys can see that, there's been quite a bit of damage done to this from it rubbing on the chassis of the tractor. They've wrapped it in electrical tape. It's full of corrosion, and I don't trust it. So I actually found a longer battery cable in my stock, so we're going to be swapping that out as well. Now, a smarter man would have done all this when he had the engine out, but I did not. So now I get to try to squeeze my hand in here to get to these solenoid nuts. And I would show you guys, but it wouldn't do no good because you can't see nothing. For our ground, I found this cable in my stash, so we're going to replace this little one with this. I have spent the last little bit just going through and tidying up our wiring, putting some zip ties in places that there weren't before. All this is looking pretty good, and that only really leaves us one more thing, and that's this throttle cable. So let me show you what I'm gonna do to make this factory throttle work, even though it wasn't designed to operate a cable. Now this will be kind of hard to see, but this lever over here is the choke lever. And as you can see, it is set up to run a cable. Well, make note, there's a little hole right here and a bolt going through with a, whatever you call them, a cush clamp that's holding the cable in place. And on that lever, it's kind of hard to see, there's a little hole in that rod for your choke lever or your choke cable to go into. Well, Wheel Horse being Wheel Horse, they used the exact same throttle rod over here. So it's already got a hole drilled in it, a provision for a cable. So what we're going to do, we're going to remove this whole assembly from the tractor. I'm going to have to put a cush clamp on here to hold the cable, but it should work fine. The only thing is, just like the choke lever, it's going to operate backwards as it did from the factory. I know that's not perfect, but to me it's a fair compromise to maintain the look of the factory control levers. And again, I'm the only one that's going to be driving this thing, and I know how they'll operate. So, and this should just drop out of the way. Like I was saying, guys, right there is the hole in this rod already set up for that. And you can see over here, they've got a hole drilled for that cush clamp. But I don't think, I'm not going to be able to flip this bracket around because then our bolt holes ain't going to line up. So all I need to do is mimic this hole over here, find me a cush clamp to hold the cable, and should work. Using a 3/16 drill bit, by the way. Instead of using the rubber the proper way on this cush clamp, I'm going to actually use it as a, I guess you call it a spacer. I'm going to double it up. That way it grips this a little bit tighter. And we should be able to get a rivet in there or a little bolt to hold this. That should work just fine. We got throttle. I spent about the last 15 minutes draining the old gas out of this fuel tank. It's kind of hard to see in this pan, but there was some water in it, and I'm sure that was part of the problem we're having getting this thing running good. So before I put this fuel cap on it, the one that was on it when I got it had a hole in it, and I didn't know. But anyway, I got this thing cleaned out pretty good. Been taking some rags down in there, not seeing hardly any rust, which is awesome. So I think we're ready to go ahead and dump some fresh gas in this thing and hit the key and see what happens. I think we are finally ready to start this thing. Got it full of fresh gas. I think we're ready to go here. Probably going to crank for a minute. I did prime the fuel system as best I can, but remember, it's got a long way to go to our fuel pump here. So let's get to cranking on this thing and see what happens. Well, this thing fired right up, which is awesome. And as you guys saw, my kill switch ain't working. I thought this wire coming out over here was the ground for the ignition coil. Maybe I'm wrong. But at any rate, I'm not going to throw shade on that. This is awesome, guys. This thing fired right up. I definitely need to adjust our throttle cable here. I think I've got it moved a little too far back and it's idling awfully high. But yeah. So let me play around with this wiring, see if I can figure out what I'm doing wrong there, and we'll try again here in a minute for a test drive. You guys are probably wondering why this engine's tore back down. It's because I'm an idiot, and let me explain why. And it all starts with this key switch right here. So as mentioned, this is a 5-pin key switch. One of these pins on here is labeled I for ignition. And me being an idiot, I kind of forgot that this key switch, it was set up for an engine that required positive voltage to the breaker points or condenser or whatever that's called. So I had wired up a kill switch to that pin on the key switch. And sure enough, this is the kill terminal for the ignition coil. This is where ground needs to go to shut spark off from the ignition coils. I grabbed a little jumper wire, grabbed my black kill wire here, and hooked it to this. And you guys can see where I'm going with this. When I did that and I started the tractor for a second time, it deadheaded battery voltage straight to the ground on these ignition coils and fried the wires. It's funny how you screw stuff up and you always end up learning something you didn't know about. So Vanguard or Briggs & Stratton, this is the kill wire. Well, what they do to, I guess, silence the independence, or I'm going to use the wrong lingo here, to make sure that this coil firing doesn't interfere with this coil, they wire in a diode essentially. It's a one-way ticket. So whenever I shut my key switch off and it grounds like it's supposed to, it will allow the ground current to flow through both coils, but it won't allow the noise of this coil to hit this one. And if you look real close, you can see that this one has officially left the chat. This little diode here saved me from frying 2 ignition coils, and these diodes are pretty cheap. My issue is availability. You know, I don't have any of these sitting around in the toolbox. So I'm going to figure out what I want to do. I could just completely do away with this and run 2 separate kill wires from each ignition coil to its own kill switch to put it to ground that way, or I could fix this. I haven't decided yet. So as much fun as I had tearing this thing apart and putting it back together for a second time, I really don't want to do it again. So what I decided to do, some of y'all may not like it, but since we're getting close to the weekend and I don't feel like waiting on parts to come in, I went ahead and ran an individual wire from each ignition coil. I've got them both sticking out here. So now we're going to go ahead and start this thing. I'm going to have a ground set up so we can kill it. Once I know proof of concept is good, I can go ahead and get us a toggle switch on the dash until my new 6 or 7 pin key switch comes in. Well, we know this one's hitting, but this engine sure is shaking. I wonder if I did end up... I didn't hook the spark plug wire back up. That'll do it. Let's try again. Hopefully with both cylinders. Yeah. Okay, so engine's running great. I tried to drive it back and forth, but it wasn't working. That's because I left the bypass valve open when we towed it in here. But, hell yeah, guys. I'm so happy. Before we take this thing outside for a road test, I do want to go ahead and throw this hood back on. Doing a little eyeballing, I know for a fact that this heat shield is not going to clear. And I know if we want to reuse our factory grill, this muffler is not going to clear. So for now, I'm going to try to get the hood back on, make sure the valve covers, all that stuff clear. We'll leave the grill out for now until I have a time to build some custom exhaust. Man, this thing is heavy. I'll show you guys where we've got some interference issues at. It's just hitting the air cleaner. And it's actually rocked back quite a bit anyway, so. All right, well, as much as I don't want to, I guess we're going to have to do some trimming on that. As little as possible to maintain the rigidity of it, but if that's the worst we got to do, then we'll be doing okay. I made a couple marks when the hood was on the tractor, so I kind of knew where I needed to cut out. I just used a piece of 4-inch exhaust pipe to kind of give me a nice clean radius and a nice straight edge. This should work. I'd rather cut too little and have meat left over to trim than to cut too much and just make this and then lose rigidity in this hood. So not too bad. A little work with the flap disc, we get that cleaned right up. I think that turned out pretty good. I wouldn't call it factory good, but I'd call it good enough. I thought we were home free. I loosened up the front mounts to get the spacing right, but that side fits great. This one, not so much. It's super tight. And I'll show you where it's hitting. That's what I get for painting without triple checking. Just barely hitting right here on the corner of the fuel pump. So I'll probably take this radius here, probably do something like that on it. And yeah, look at that. The hood is fitting perfect. There's the finished product. Like I said, I just pulled that radius back a little bit. And yeah, we've got all the clearance we need now. As mentioned, the grill is not going to fit with the stock muffler set up on this, but that's okay. I can live with that for now. I would like to build some custom exhaust for this. As goofy as it would be and as obnoxious as it would be, I think a couple dual stacks coming up out of the hood would look pretty sweet. You guys will tell me in the comments. Y'all, it was heavy. I'd say that's all the lift we're going to get. Front end is very light. Everything seems to be working right. Vanguard is running smooth. Man, I'm so happy to have this thing back up and running good. Tractors are so much more enjoyable when you can actually use them. But I'm kind of getting cold. So I think it's time to go ahead and pull this thing back in the shop, Don. I am so happy with the way this thing is running. Anytime I consider doing a repower on one of these old tractors, I always catch hate from the purist. They go, oh, just rebuild what you got. Like I said, I would have spent more time and money just trying to get that K-Series up and working again. It just ain't worth it. With a few days time and a small amount of money, we managed to get a later model, good running engine in this thing. And it really didn't take a whole lot of work. There's still so much more I want to do. I know I've got the wiring set up now to where it's working, but I really would like to get the proper key switch put in this so we don't have any jank wiring hanging off the side. And as you saw, the headlights are out of it. I'm planning on doing an LED upgrade to this thing. And as sure most of you noticed, I didn't even bother putting the headlight wiring back in because I knew I was going to be changing it. Same deal with the exhaust and the grill. Grills are extremely hard to find for these in good shape, and I just could not bring myself to chop that one up to make that stock muffler work. And like I said, I think some custom dual stacks on this thing would look pretty sweet and kind of match the tow rig image it's got going on. The other big issue that I haven't really spoke about yet is the weight difference between that K-Series and this Vanguard. But just the weight of the old K-Series on the back of this thing was enough to get the front end light. So we really need to get some counterweight back on the front end of this thing so I can use it how I want to. And as you guys saw, it's been snowing pretty much nonstop. I do have a tractor with a snow plow on it, but if I can get an all-around utility tractor, I would love to put a plow on the front of this thing And I think that would also help with our counterweight issue. But all that work I just mentioned, we're gonna save it for another video. So make sure you guys hit the subscribe button, put down in the comments what you think of this thing. And I guess that's gonna do it for now. So I'll see you on the next one. Take care.